Nearly everything in the article is verifiably untrue. These manufacturers know that influencers are the new media. People don't trust what they see on television. People trust what they see on TikTok and YouTube for the most part. So these companies are trying to target the influencer market more than the legacy media market. Everything's about emissions compliance nowadays. And that's very unfortunate because the reality is that a lot of emissions compliance changes.
All right, we are here again with Nate. Nate, thanks for coming back because we have some new news from General Motors and other YouTube outlets. GM is claiming that they released a new Gen 3 valve body for their 10-speed transmission. And it's interesting that they say to fix the wheel lockup, which they kind of already band-aided that with software. But Nate, you've read through this article. What are your first thoughts on this?
Well, thanks for having me on. My first thoughts are that it's obviously just a bunch of misinformation. Nearly everything in the article is verifiably untrue. I would be happy to prove all of that during this video. But the media that I read in the article seems to focus on a point that the software update was only a good idea for certain people, and that a valve body replacement is requisite for others, and that they were hard to get, so they redesigned it that way they could have a more reliable one with a different part number that they could access quickly. The issue is that this is total and it's not true. And if you do any sort of independent research, you would see that this isn't true. If you look at the article, you'll see that the part number for valve body that they're saying is the new updated part number is actually not for the 10-speed Allison or most of the 10L 60, 80, and 90. It's for ones that have an electronic shift system. So this is mostly your off-road variations, such as AT4s, but also things like Escalades, things like that. Anything with an electronic park system. I ran this part number, and it's actually pretty much identical to the replacement part number. In fact, this part number is totally indiscernible to the naked eye. So when you read the article, you'll see that they mention how the solenoids and all of the other parts have been changed and redesigned in some way. In fact, the exact quote is completely redesigned. To where it's going to be different and it's not going to have these problems. The issue is that this is the same part number of valve body that trucks that come with that specific type of valve body. And we're starting to get them here as cores because they've already failed. These valve bodies, from what we have been able to observe, have been in circulation for about 8 months. To the accessibility of the consumer. So everything in this article is simply untrue, and I would be more than happy to debate that with anybody at any time.
Yeah, and we did ask, this is on Pickup Truck and Plus SUV Talk on Tim's channel, and I did ask Tim to come on here, and he did decline. I know Tim, disagrees with guests I've had on, like you, Nate, and Cello, I'm sure. I don't, that's not really my concern. My concern is whether or not some guy's out there looking to buy a $60,000 to $80,000 truck, and he wants to know. So when he sees an article like this, what bugs me about this, and I truly didn't know, I wanted to reach out to you and ask you, but when I see an article like this, like, hey, GM releases this Gen 3 valve body, and, it says, hooray, there's a 10-speed transmission wheel lockup fix. Well, there's been a couple different paths of this. One is GM did a software update that was supposed to fix this rear lockup and warn people when they were going to have it. That didn't actually work out, and people still have the rear wheel lockup to this day. So then they just replaced valve bodies. But the core problem is the valve body's still the same valve body, like what you said. Why do you think this is coming out from, who did he say? Max Muncy. I mean, I don't even know who this guy is.
I know who
Corporate
Max Muncy is.
Do
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. So I don't know him personally, but LaFontaine they're just an automotive conglomerate. They sell a lot of cars. That's all they do. And so obviously they're in the business of being the OEM's cuck. And so they do whatever the OEM tells them to do. So dealerships, even if they hate the OEM, even if they have a bad relationship as a franchisee, they know that the OEM has power over them. It's in their contracts. This is why anybody who sells cars is ultimately on the manufacturer's side, even if they claim to be an advocate for you. The reason that I believe that they're saying things like this is that they're just trying to do public relations work for their daddy, which would be the OEMs. These cartels operate in a fashion where they want any sort of dissenting opinion to not be allowed in their vertical, meaning that any of their franchisees who say openly that they believe that there's something wrong with the manufacturer's product, they can't just excise you from your franchise agreement because you disagree with something they do, but they can do so through intermediaries. So what do I mean by that? They'll just stop giving you allocations. So, for example, if you're a Dodge dealer and you had an allocation for two Demon 130s, they're only giving that car to very, very important dealerships. And it's a very bureaucratic culture to get cars like that. For example, GM, Chevrolet dealers, only a few of them are going to get a ZR1X, C8 ZR1X. And so these are basically favorite child games. And so if you don't play to the good graces of your dad, which would be the criminal cartels that run these franchisees, the parent manufacturer, then you're not going to get the allocations that you need to actually make good money. Your rep is probably going to treat you poorly. So it's very cult-like behavior. It's cartel-like behavior. If you're a dissenter, then you're not welcome in the club.
It's not a defense of these YouTubers or me saying that they're at fault either. But I hear a lot of YouTubers like TFL Truck and Tim and others say, these manufacturers are not paying us. They might pay for their airfare, put them up in hotels, stuff like that, pay for their meals, whatever it is, but they're not paying them directly. They're not paying a YouTuber directly to do reviews. They're just allowing them into that inner circle of engineers and allowing them in to see the new products before anyone else sees them, like the Doug DeMuros of the world. What do you think about that? And their defense is always, well, we're not paid by these manufacturers.
Yeah, of course it is. So I know a huge amount about what you're talking about, and I'd like to educate the public. I want everybody to understand the kind of game that's being played here. Now, I don't know about this gentleman specifically. I don't know him. But let me tell you the game that these manufacturers play with the YouTube and influencer market. These manufacturers know that influencers are the new media. People don't trust what they see on television. People trust what they see on TikTok and YouTube for the most part. They're very aware of this trend. And I think the most recent election is how they came to this conclusion. They saw how much it influenced things, and they know that that has ripple effects throughout culture. So these companies are trying to target the influencer market more than the legacy media market. So here's the thing, they can't just pay you to do an endorsement without you having to disclose that. And that's inconvenient for them. So they would rather pay you through intermediaries where it's technically legal. So, for example, instead of giving you $10,000, I would give you a free vacation if I was a manufacturer, right? I would give you a free vacation, put you up in a Ritz Carlton, fly you out, Delta business class. You'd get a limousine to the Ritz Carlton, then a limousine to the press event. You would get catered the finest food. We would definitely have alcohol so that we could influence you a little more. It's very predatory behavior. Well, imagine if you did that to women. What would they call it? So it's very predatory behavior. So they wine and dine these people. They hit them with the Marvin Gaye and Chardonnay. And then by the time they get them there, they're only asking them to do 2 or 3 hours worth of work, which is basically just seeing how much they can fillet and worship these companies. And so here's the connection. This is what everybody needs to know. If you take nothing from this video, take this. Just because they're not paying them with a check or liquidity, cash, doesn't mean they're not paying them through other things. If you get a free vacation, also that you can have access to a press vehicle that you can use to scale your YouTube channel so that you can get more views, so that you can make more money off things like Google AdSense or YouTube's monetization program, then technically you are being paid, but you're not being paid with cash. You're being paid with resources. This is what you call a quid pro quo. It's no different than people who say, "Well, I didn't pay him. I just, gave him a laptop for him to do that." Okay, well, you still paid the guy. You just didn't give the guy cash. I mean, come on, this is obvious. This is what they call plausible deniability. So they wine and dine these influencers and they cuck them into saying favorable things. Because if you don't say favorable things, they just won't invite you back. They're going to say, we want honest, unbiased reporting, all that good stuff. Okay, well, they want honest and unbiased reporting until you perform honest and unbiased reporting. If they wanted honest and unbiased reporting, they would fly me out there, but they won't do it because they know I'd go out there and I would tell the truth, and then I would be no longer allowed at the Cool Kids Club. That's the game they play. And these people know that they're playing this game because they need access to these things to scale their social media reach, to monetize, for example, a forum or website or merchandise sales that they have. And don't get me wrong, they're honest influencers. There's no shortage of them. I'm a big fan of people like Butter the Insider, OC Motivator. PK's Garage is a rock star. I have tons of respect for these people, and they have close relationships with the manufacturer. They're all Dodge guys, right? but they have close relationships with the manufacturer, yet they're not afraid to tell the truth and they're not afraid to hold their nuts to the fire. Unfortunately, a lot of influencers don't do that. They live to be obsequious and sycophantic and servile to these big manufacturers so they can scale their YouTube channel so that they can monetize that asset and then plausibly deny that they're being paid because nobody gave them physical cash. It's a complete scam, in my opinion.
I always think about it, if someone invited me, if I was doing this for a living, it would be different. You know, if it was my paycheck, if it was what I relied on every week, I'd probably treat it differently. I wouldn't want to bite the hand that feeds. So I would probably approach it differently than even what I have. But I don't need to do that. So here we are.
Just so
And
you
this,
know, that valve body looks identical to the new one.
really, yeah.
There is no visible difference to the untrained eye. It's absurd. It's pompous.
Yeah, it's, and I don't know what image is floating around out there, but you looked at a bunch of images of the exact part number he put in this, and all of them look the same. And how many times have they updated this part number on their 10 speed? Has it been like 4 times?
There are tons of different part numbers for the same valve bodies, and that's not just a General Motors thing. That's almost every manufacturer. So it's very hard to quantify how many times they change a part number because they might change it 3 or 4 times, but that exact valve body might fit 8 to 10 different types of vehicle that all have their own part numbers, even though they're the same product, because they want to keep tabs on how many are being sold to which vehicles and things like that. So it's very hard to get accurate numbers because companies, not just General Motors, but to be fair, nearly all of them do this across their lineup. So it's hard to give you an answer that would be accurate. But many times, I can tell you that many times, and
Yeah.
I've never noticed any significant changes. The only two changes I have ever seen throughout the lifespan of this valve body have been a full-time thermostat valve, full-time flow thermostat valve, which is not very significant. You could turn it backwards and it would actually be open all the time. I've also seen the separator plate. They've changed where some of the holes are at, but they haven't changed the quality of the part itself. So I believe that that's just them trying to look like they're doing something. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make the product better. And then the third change would be going to a steel feed limit low valve, but that doesn't fix the problem because all of the design features, such as the cleaning lands, so they call them, that trigger the valve bore to wear out so quickly, are still there. So it doesn't change anything. I think they were doing that to combat valve erosion. The issue is that virtually all of these that fail, it's not due to valve erosion, it's due to bore erosion. So this is stuff this is what I try to tell people. Transmission companies or companies that work with transmissions know that the average person, here's me, somebody who engineers transmission parts for a living, they hear me and they're like, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but I don't know enough to even understand, right?
Yeah.
They know that the average person doesn't know a lot about transmissions. So they peddle falsehoods to people so that they can manipulate them and try to twist the narrative to their own advantage. This is the same thing that I believe happens in any industry where the average person is not an expert, healthcare, I don't know, anything, man, anything, right? And healthcare is just an obvious one, right? And this pattern of misconduct, morally criminal conduct, in my opinion, it's not going to change until people stop buying the cars. If you really want to make General Motors have a personality change, treat them like Oldsmobile and watch what happens.
Yeah, he says in this article, a Facebook post from a person who had this part replaced on their truck said that the technician noted the new part was completely redesigned with new solenoids, new wiring, and a new body design. I don't know how I mean, you have all the bolt patterns in the transmission aren't going to change. So your
Yeah.
locations and your size can't really, like, there's no benefit in changing the new body design, like, unless you're putting a new separator plate in, like what you've done.
Oh, I'll put it this way. I am the only person in the automotive industry who's designed a 10-speed Allison and 10-speed General Motors valve body that we're confident warrantying for life. And we have God knows how many thousands, if not over 10,000 out there at this point, between upgrade kits and then complete assembled valve bodies, all using the same parts. Okay, so I know what I'm talking about, and this person doesn't. And here's what I'll tell you. A Facebook post from an individual who brought their truck to a dealership referencing something that they hearsay their technician said without any sort of primary evidence, such as a photograph, is literally the lowest level of evidence imaginable. Like that is literally like, well, my dog's friend's goldfish's cousin said, like it doesn't, it's so stupid, and it's painful to me because I spend all day trying to educate people at the expense of my privacy, in some cases, my safety, and probably sales too, because when I tell people not to buy a new car, it's very likely that they won't come to us for anything, or that they'll come to us for parts that cost less. So even against my own income, I try to educate people because I want the consumers to understand that these people are liars. You can bleep that out if you have to. And I hate that. I believe in what I do. I believe in designing the most adamant, durable parts imaginable. I spend my own money for these things to exist for people. And people wonder why I'm mad all the time and why I'm so aggressive towards these OEMs. Well, how would you feel if you put your life and soul into making something you believe in and have proven is worth every ounce to people who purchase it? And then you have to compete with people who literally just lie. And then the worst part is that the people who lie have a significantly larger voice than you because they are capitalized or subsidized or given benefit from the largest manufacturers on the planet. It's a giant David versus Goliath battle, and it can be pretty dehumanizing at times. But I want customers to be educated. If a critical mass of consumers in the United States had access to the information that I do as an insider, these companies would go the way of Plymouth very quickly.
Yeah, it's sad, and I honestly don't think Tim. I think if this Max Muncy guy reached out and told him stuff, I think Tim would probably just believe it. From watching Tim's videos, he generally just believes. He's got friends at GM, friends at all these and they tell him something. They're his friends, so that he believes that, hey, they've updated it. And in Tim's specific case, he's done some decent reporting recently on, like, you can't delete your diesel. Like, everybody's saying, oh, you can just delete your diesel and now you can take all the EGR stuff off. And like, that's not true.
Yeah, no, no,
So
I wouldn't test it.
yeah, I'm not saying that what Tim is always reporting is always bad. That's not what I'm
Yeah,
saying. But in this
I
specific
agree.
scenario, he's even stating us. There was a video where Tim referenced us. He didn't reference us by name, but he did reference our interactions, and he even says it here. There have been reports of frustrated dealership service managers taking valve bodies from other vehicles and going to the aftermarket companies to get customers back on the road. However, this looks to all be over, with GM confirming that they are now shipping new and improved Gen 3 valve bodies. From my perspective, Tim is saying all of a sudden next gen is not necessary, and everything we've said in our past videos. Well, we don't need to do that anymore. It's all water under the bridge. GM's fixed it all. Everything's gonna be just fine.
Well, look, so just to be clear, I don't blame him either. I don't know if he's just misinformed or if he,
Yeah.
has other intentions. I don't know. I don't know him. What I will say is that, that's totally false. At any given time, we have hundreds of these kits going out to dealers on a regular basis. That's just completely false. And in addition to that, even if what he was saying is true, which it's not, and we invited him on here, he wasn't interested, and that's okay. That's okay. I was hoping he would come on, but I guess not. Even if what he was saying was true, which again it's not, it wouldn't impact the vast majority of these that are out on the road, the Allisons and all of the ones that don't have an electronic park system. We're talking about one part number. So this is just more automotive industry misinformation. This is an organized attempt to mislead the public, and these are the people that they use as henchmen. They use them as pawns. They take people who either A, really do believe in what the franchises or the manufacturers tell them, and they weaponize that against the public, or alternatively, they just get yes men who really don't care if what they're saying is true or not. Again, I don't know which Mr. Tim is. I don't know him. What I can say is the bottom line is very simple, and it's that he used his platform to peddle information that's verifiably untrue to people. I hope nobody makes a large financial decision based on this information.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know if Tim knows it. I'll talk to him about it after this video goes live. Hopefully, Tim, you're not too upset about it. But, I know Tim's big on journalism. He's big on trying to verify things before you put it out there. And everybody makes mistakes. I've made mistakes. But, in this case, I would just hope that it's not some big mistake where you're telling people that, hey, man, everything's good. You can buy a new GM now. And then these people go out and have the same problems they've been having all along.
Well, here's the issue. If Tim used the kind of language that I do and spread the kind of information that I do, then these franchise, these OEMs, they wouldn't allow him to get press vehicles.
Yeah.
He would get what's called blacklisted, right? and there's a blacklist in almost every industry, and he'd get blacklisted. And I don't, know his personal finances or anything. It's not my business. But if he's relying on YouTube or his website for a lot of that income, then he'd be destabilizing that income that he needs to sustain himself if he got blacklisted from this industry by being honest. This is how they manipulate automotive YouTubers and journalists to say things that just aren't true, is because that's the only information they have access to. And if they say anything else, even if they know that it's true, they will be exiled from this industry at once. And Toyota has done this, in my opinion. Volkswagen has absolutely done this, in my opinion. Tesla, Ford, they all do this, in my opinion.
Yeah, I personally know some YouTubers that this happened to, and same thing. They don't. The way they can get away with it is they don't have to write you a letter and tell you, "Hey, you said something we didn't like." They just, like you said, they don't invite you back. So
Oh, yeah,
it's never in writing. It's never. They don't have to tell you why.
they'll
They
ghost
just,
you.
yeah, you're just ghosted, and that's how they control the narrative.
Well, why do you think I
Pretty
don't get
simple.
invited on any of these legacy YouTube channels? You
Yeah,
know how many hundreds of thousands of people have seen just your videos that have me so far? We get thousands of people calling in talking about, hey, like, I'm not trying to buy anything, but you guys were so helpful, and I just wanted you to know, keep it up, right? I,
yeah,
I, I mean, we have spread information to a huge number of people just on this
yeah.
channel, right? In fact, those videos get more views than some of the largest YouTube channels in the automotive industry. Go on Motor Trend's channel, look how many views they get. They don't get many. It's because Hearst Communications bought them out and decided they didn't care about making content car people want to hear about. They just wanted to sell advertising. These are the same people that own Car and Driver and Road and Track magazine, by the way. Hearst Communications, you can fact check me, sue me. But this is the industry, man. It's unfortunate. If you're an honest YouTuber, you just won't get press cars. That's the way it works. And if you don't get press cars, it's hard to make income.
I know people. If people are watching from General Motors or wherever, hey, if you guys want to debunk what we are saying here, man, I would invite any of you. We can do a live stream. We can do it unedited, and we can walk through every part of the valve body if you want to, and show us what's going in these trucks. Maybe Nate, you were talking about what, buying a new truck at some point and just showing. Maybe I'll do that. Go buy a truck
Yeah.
and then tear the valve body out and just take it apart and say, is this different? Like it's verifiable information when people say this.
Yeah.
All this stuff, it's really easy to provide the evidence. So if General Motors wanted to, you could go online, you could do your own videos, you can come on this channel and you can show us what you've changed and why it fixes all these problems. And I doubt they will, but it'd be really cool if they did. I mean, it'd be a change.
Well,
So
I hope they do, because I would be prepared at any given time. I know more about their valve body than anybody does in the aftermarket. I'm the one inventing everything for it. So the only way to fix this valve body is obviously with steel smoothbore sealed off valves, thicker plates, and changing some of the oil geometry and spring rates. And I'm the one who figured that out. And I don't believe that the engineers can't figure that out. I believe that the financiers who are really in charge of these companies won't let them do it. So I feel bad
yeah.
for any of the engineers at these companies that truly know better. It must be very artistically restrictive. It's almost like taking somebody who paints for a living and telling them you can only paint a stick man with a smiley face. Well, you've stifled all of their, intellectual capabilities. You've stifled all of their talents. Their talents are being squandered in the name of somebody else's financial interest. This goes back to what I say in every video. The only true customer at any of these manufacturing cartels is the shareholder.
How hard do you think it would be, just tangent? How hard do you think it would be to be an engineer, engineering these valve bodies and just being told over and over and over, go back and make it cheaper? Go back
Man,
at
I
like,
know people. You know how many people I know that work at these manufacturers, and I know a guy that works at Ford. Actually, I'll give you a better example. I have a buddy that I was in the military with that works at the SRT division at Dodge, or at least he did until recently. I think he's no longer there, but he worked on fuel mapping. He's a stoichiometrics guy, right? And he specializes in fuel delivery, doing the software for all that BS, right? He's like, everything I do, they make me do it again, and it's either emissions, it's sound complaints, it's how cheap can we make the part. And to be honest, what's painful is SRT historically has been, in my opinion, the least bad about that.
Mm,
SRT has been the first one to buy emissions credits off of companies like Tesla and
yeah.
Rivian. They have been the first to do something correctly, even if it costs more. They're really not that bad. And even he is telling me that that has been his experience. So, what
Jeez.
must people go through at companies like Ford and Volkswagen and General Motors? I mean, it must be totally inundating. And the other thing is that Dodge is becoming, Dodge and Jeep and Chrysler, actually, all of them are really not that profitable of companies anymore. So there's a lot of downward pressure on the manufacturing quality of everything that they do.
Yeah.
These companies are in serious trouble, man. And I feel bad for the engineers that work at these companies whose creativity has been stifled by financiers who don't even know what they're doing for a living.
Yeah. Well, time will tell. We'll have in 6 months or a year, we'll know how good these Gen 3 valve bodies are.
We're already getting them here blown up, so I can already tell you they're not good, but that's okay.
What's the lowest mileage one you've heard of? Or do they tell you the mileage from the dealerships?
Um, I'm not the one who gets that information, even when they do tell us. But I mean, I've seen a few come in here that were like really low, like clearly they're out the box defective, like sub 100 mile, like something was wrong with them at
Mm,
delivery, sort of thing. We've had a few cases like that. Um, but I assume that those are things where they were defective at the factory, and you know, somebody didn't check something. As far as ones where like they weren't out the box defective, but they failed prematurely, I think the lowest numbers we've heard are in that 5 to 10,000 mile range. But I mean, it's embarrassing, man. I mean, I say this all the time. I drive a '77 Lincoln Continental with a 3 speed, and it made it 100,000 miles on one transmission, never changed the fluid or anything. And I put a new transmission in it just because that's what we do here. And there was actually nothing wrong with the previous one. Everything was absolutely healthy, and nothing needed ream. There were no cross leaks anywhere. I mean, there was a time where transmissions were extraordinarily sturdy in the
yeah.
United States, and that time is just long gone. The eon of the TH400 and the C6 and everything, that time is gone. We're never going to see that again. And it's painful because those cars were manufactured for less than modern cars are, but they were
Hmm.
dramatically more reliable. And this goes back to another point that I often make. I'll be fair to General Motors and Ford and all them, even though they're often not fair to me. You have to blame the regulators for a very large portion of this because a lot of what they're trying to do with transmissions is now weight reduction. So if you look up ZF, a lot of their selling points when they're marketing to other manufacturers who want to license that product in their vehicles is weight reduction, shift timing, things like that. It's all about emissions compliance, and the European Union has been a big part of this.
Yeah.
Canada has been a big part of this, and under the previous administration, the U.S. was a big problem too. It's been assuaged a little bit with the change of administration, but everything's about emissions compliance nowadays. And that's very unfortunate because the reality is that a lot of emissions compliance changes don't have a radical effect on emissions. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. And I tell people all the time, your air quality is at much greater risk for things such as agriculture, aircrafts, things like that. Those have crazy impacts on air quality, but somehow we're being bullied because we want a vehicle that just had 6 speeds instead of 37 speeds in the gearbox. It just doesn't make logical sense. I don't see any reason that 4 and 6 speed transmissions cannot be in modern vehicles. I don't see any reason that AFM and DFM systems just don't need to exist. And I definitely don't see a reason with common rail technology and high quality lift pumps like FAST and AirDog. I definitely don't see a reason that we need emissions control devices on modern diesel engines. I think that's retarded.
I go back and forth. A lot of people say, "Well, what do you want the air that you breathe to be terrible?" I'm like, "No,
No,
I don't want to be breathing terrible air or having even these diesel guys. It's sad that you can make a diesel burn really efficient, but then you get the guys that are rolling coal and giving diesel guys a bad name, and they're blowing black smoke on everybody. And it's like, well, don't do that because you're just pissing people off. It's like there's a balance.
I don't understand. So the issue with almost everything in society, and it's not even just the car world, is you have a small group of people who ruin it for the big group of people by being idiots.
Yep.
And it becomes a group punishment environment. And we've all seen that. The guy who, deliberately pokes a hole in a charge pipe so that he gets a boost leak and then just goes down the freeway blowing smoke on everybody. Like we've all seen behavior like that. It's ignorant. It's done great damage to the cause. And so On the flip side, the EPA, in my opinion, does not relegate their resources appropriately. They disproportionately target the automotive industry and disproportionately there within the diesel community. And so they participate in this criminal racketeering behavior where they just deride people and bully people and try to take capital out of these businesses and suck it back up to the government because they sell what? Because they sold EGR block off plates? Is that really the biggest crime in modern society? I mean, you have cruise ships dumping imperial tons of human waste onto wildlife in local waters, visual distance from the shore. You have people dumping exorbitant amounts of trash in the oceans. I mean, you have landfills that have forever chemicals to the tune of kilotons. I mean, it's completely absurd. If you really cared about the environment, you'd be much more worried about things like that than some guy putting an EGR delete on his 6.7 liter Power Stroke. I mean, there's no chain of logic where that makes sense. The issue is that people who want to delete their diesel trucks do not have access to the same lobbying support as the airline industry or the cruise ship industry or waste management or anything else. And I don't mean the company, I mean the practice of managing waste. So people are just idiots. There's nothing you can do about that.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to say about this article in particular, or what you think is going to happen with General Motors? You think it's just going to be business as usual?
Well, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen, and you can bet any amount of money on it. I said this in the first video I did with you. I've said it in every video thereafter, and I'll say it again. They're not going to change it. They never fixed the 4L60. They never fixed the 6L50. They never fixed the 8L45, and they're never going to fix this. This is par for the course for General Motors. It's never going to change. It's going to suck forever. And then eventually something else is going to happen. They're going to move on with their lives. The reality is that if they're profitable, they don't feel like they need to change anything other than getting more profitable. And putting the consumers first is against their best interest because their best interest is that of the shareholders. It's never going to change. And anybody in this industry should know that about every single company out there that mass produces automobiles in the Western world anywhere. It's just the way it is. Don't buy the cars.
Oh, one last question on this. It says it was redesigned with new solenoids. Wasn't that
That's
the most beefy part in these valve bodies?
I've never seen them fail unless they were exposed to water or they overheated or they were physically damaged from like dropping or something.
Yeah.
They're some of the most reliable parts of the valve body. These solenoids, they're linear force solenoids. So what happens is they energize, and then there's a rod that comes out and it ejects the valve into the concentric position, the open position. And that's how that works. It opens the valve enough so that oil can get behind it, and the oil getting behind it pushes the valve the remainder of the way. And then you have balance oil on the nose of the valve that then turns that valve off when you no longer need oil pressure to that portion of the valve body, or excuse me, to that portion of the transmission. That's how they work. They're extremely reliable. Like I said, unless they get packed with material, overheated, water exposure, physical damage, they're almost never going to fail. We've had thousands of these 10-speed valve bodies come through here, both Ford and GM. Um, I don't know that we've ever found one that was bad other than those exclusionary examples I gave you. So, yeah. And the other thing is he's making that up. That's not true. So either he's making that up or whoever gave him that
The Facebook
information is
guy,
making it
yeah.
up. Yeah, it's not true.
Yeah.
This is more Facebook certified misinformation. These people are idiots. And I'm not talking about Mr. Tim. I don't know him. But whoever said that is either lying or just stupid.
What about new wiring? Why
That's
did they
also
need
stupid. It's
what? It's
Oh
like
man.
it's funny because all the things you've told me, I have them rattling around my brain of what was wrong with the valve body and why you fixed certain things, and you gave reasons behind it all, and not none of these line up with why you said these things are shifting poorly or whatever. It's kind of funny.
Dude, I say this all the time. All right, all right. So consumers need to know this. Here's another important teaching moment. This industry knows that they can abuse you specifically because they know that the average person does not know how an automatic transmission works. Because of this, they blow smoke up your at the cyclic rate. It's hard to do this when it comes to oil filters or traditional combustion engines because the average car guy or gal has some clue how those things operate. Transmissions are absolute gypsy magic to people. And because of that, they peddle falsehoods to you. Please be informed. Don't trust me. Don't trust anybody. Independently research everything. Hear all, trust none. But just hear me out. They're full of, they're lying. Fact check me, sue me, come debate me. I'm so serious. I don't care. General Motors can bring 100 engineers on here. There's nobody out there with an IQ above potato who believes that these cheap aluminum valves that wear down, eat the bore, beat the hell out of it, high porosity aluminum. There's nobody that thinks that's the best way to do things. There are zero people. If you do, then you're just a mentally unwell person. There are people, I remember going to school with a kid who was always in the back of the class, and he was one of those idiots that was always huffing the markers and eating the Elmer's glue. I went to school with a kid like that. Okay, his name was Patrick Sourwine, and if he's watching this, I'm never going to forget you, man. You're weird. Okay, but here's what I'll tell you. People like that, believe it or not, sometimes grow up and get into corporate finance. And sometimes those people get into large automotive manufacturers. And sometimes those people rise far enough in the ranks to make critical decisions about how these companies are ran. I am telling you now, whenever a company is ran by financiers and not people in the native vocation, you will have major problems. The reason NextGen is so successful is because it's ran by a guy that literally just loves cars, but is also an expert in transmission design. I imagine that the best plumbing companies are ran by plumbers. The best electrical companies are ran by electricians. The worst of all of these industries are the ones that are ran by private equity firms and financiers and people with a business degree and no practical experience. That's how these companies fail. If you're a consumer, please learn as much as you can about transmissions, not from Facebook certified people, but from engineering community, from facts, from people who've owned a shop for a long time. Like, find the most credible people you can, not people who want to sell you something, people who want to tell you the truth. And this is why I tell people, don't listen to what I have to, well, listen, but don't just blindly trust what I have to say. Okay, look, we sell a product too. I don't want people to feel like we're just trying to sell to them, because that's not the point. I want people to be informed. And the reality is that if there's any reason that somebody can trust that, it's because if people would stop buying new cars, I'd be out of a damn job. That's all we work on is 6 through 10 speed cars. If everybody drove a 1977 Lincoln Continental Town Car, then we would have nobody to sell parts to. So I'm trying to peddle information that is actually harmful to me when people adopt it. I just want people to understand what's going on in this industry, and I get nothing but threats and violent remarks, and I get blacklisted from people that supply us. I get blacklisted from magazines that are like, hey, we were going to do advertising with you, but then we saw the company, we're full, we don't have any more positions. Oh, we can't sell to you guys, you're on the no sell list. How can we be on the no sell list if we've never called you guys? What are you talking about? All these companies that are in the deep think of the transmission industry have exiled us over the past 6 months. And they've done that because they know that I'm coming for them and I'm coming for daddy, which is the manufacturers. And I want consumers to know what the hell's going on. And frankly, I don't care about getting parts from third parties anymore. If you want to cut off my supply, that's fine. We make our own parts in house as far as valves and plates and everything else. So if you want to tell me I can't buy a sensor or a solenoid or whatever anymore, that's fine. We'll just sell the parts that we make here. We'll be more than plentiful doing so. But I want consumers to know how things are here. And I don't care what happens to me. I care what happens to the automotive industry. If I get put out of a job because I changed the automotive industry by stimulating a movement where people stop buying new cars because they're the worst cars ever made, then so be it. I'm a fortunate person. I don't need anything else. But I want consumers to know how this industry operates.
Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, don't buy a new car.
All right. Well, thanks, Nate. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a good night.